Hey guys, I've got a bunch of things to share with you this morning. Anybody have any questions they want to kick around?
No.
Topics that are burning? Steve Duke and I, maybe I'll start there. So Steve Duke and I got into a conversation. You know, the way we calculate, if you're thinking about the range of values chart inside Clarity 1 and 2, and they're separate. So be mindful. They are level 2 populates, but you can also adjust it in level 2. Anyway, right now, you'll notice that it's a 9 grid, right? 3 by 3 grid. And one of the tiles will be yellow, and that is giving an indication of value. The challenge is if you look to the left, to the right, to the top, and the bottom of it, you'll see some very different numbers. And what we need to do, and what we train to do, is to say, okay, yeah, you're in this square, but keep in mind that your value capacity is 43, so you're kind of you're at the lower end of this line. So this might be a bit of an optimistic number, but at least we're having the conversation. Well, what happens if we apply the strategic capacity calculation to the best case value? Because strategic capacity measures as a rating of company specific risk, and it turns out that comes up with an even better number, right? A more precise number. Very cool. So we're kind of moving beyond just we're improving the conversation. So that's one thing you're going to see. You'll see value at strategic capacity or strategic capacity value as a third line. So you have low end, maximum, and value capacity. And that will just help us guide the conversation. So that's one thing that's happening, man. The rain is, can you guys hear it? It is here. I walked in here. It was not raining at all. It is coming down now. So that's one thing. Happy to discuss. So stop me if you want me to take a breath. I'm on a tear. The other thing we're doing is, you've all been through.
So George, what is the problem we're solving for there? Is you wanted to have more sensitivity to the graph?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this. He said.
So as we move the client through the process and they up their ratings, you're going to see more dramatic impact.
It'll just have a more granular view of the impact.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So that the guys are working on. The next thing we're doing is, this is Mike Desiato's request. It was a really good idea. We are going to we're updating the dashboard so that you'll have more control over changing your email address, your password, your logo, and have the ability to add your meeting link, whether it's Google or Calendly or HubSpot, whatever. Be able to add that link and check a radio dial, and that link will populate a line on your lead generator. At the bottom, it says, if you want to meet with me, click here. And that'll go to your calendar. So people, while they're looking at your report, can book time with you. I'm here to tell you, I don't know how often that will happen, but it'll happen some, right? And that just goes down to people not really knowing that, we haven't yet talked to them to help them understand. It's up to you to call them. But if we might as well give them the ability to book time with you, because CEOs, and those of you you guys have all used Clarity One with CEOs, they get value, right? They lean into it. Also, API, and I've been saying I'm going to do this for a while there now. It's now moved up in the dev stack because we've been finishing things, checking boxes. This has moved up the API so that when Steve, for example, has Clarity lead gen out there, somebody completes it, Clarity will automatically sync with whatever your sales and marketing hub is, HubSpot, Zoho, what have you. It'll sync that email address into HubSpot. Now, I'll just use HubSpot as our stalking horse. Why is that important? Well, you can set up, if you subscribe to this, they have a bunch of modules, right? So if you subscribe to this module, one thing you'll have them as a lead in your CRM. Cool. That's great. Next thing you can do is you can set up a workflow, right? On what's called an automation to start dripping on this person. Maybe you've recorded a video. We're going to provide you guys with resources, and maybe you've recorded a video. Hey, let me explain your strategic capacity report to you. Here's a white paper here, so we can start a nurture stream to them, and you can start watching behavior. And when we go on a macro level, if I'm thinking firm wide with a more robust marketing ability, we can start running programs using Clarity. So whether you're doing it as an individual or on a bigger basis, So that's going to be, and that's a very simple API. That's the next thing. The third, I'll just keep going on clarity. We're developing, and I've been saying this for a while, project management, so that rather than manually building a project plan, the system will create a project that automatically lines out on a Gantt chart. It'll default to 2 week, the 2 week sprints. Each of the things that you tell the system you want included in the Gantt chart. That's good, right?
George,
Go ahead, Joe.
When those modules, I noticed that you have kind of a set scope of work that would go drop down into the spreadsheet.
Yep.
That would be associated with that quarterly work. Those are still going to be auto-populated, and then we can tweak them as necessary. But by and large, it's kind of a placeholder for tasks that could be modified for them individually. But
yeah, that's exactly right. And hand in glove with that, Joe, what I've written, and I'm doing it'll be done by the end of this coming weekend, are instructions. So effective senior leadership, shareholder defines time-bound goals for the business. Well, what do we need to do? We need to meet with the shareholders, meet or hold a facilitated session. We're just going to have instructions. I know it's very intuitive, but I've had enough questions come back. Okay, well, what do you recommend I do with this? We'll put this is designed to be for guidance, for very precise guidance, but it's for guidance because every client is different. So it's just sort of food for thought. How are we going to reduce CEO dependency? Well, we're going to define accountabilities. We're going to share those accountabilities. We're going to assign them to other people, and we're going to run drills. We're going to do what the military does, right? And we're going to run drills where we have decision-making protocols. And, when the CEO actually leaves town, we are going to practice running the business without the CEO. We're going to get better at running the business without the CEO, for example. So all of that. So you have a marketing module coming. You have a project creation and management module coming. And you have an instruction module coming. And these will come relatively quickly. So that's all for clarity. Any questions? And then guys, what the intent is to have everything from your first marketing touch through long-term engagements. And then we'll circle back and we're going to do an evolution of the history tab. Right now, you guys don't have enough history to warrant it, so that's still further down the dev timeline. Cool. This you're funny. So that's the dev. Now, what else are we doing? Cool. We're doing a revamp of the launch course. So we're going to make the launch course. The launch course is terrific. It has a lot of theory. We are going to, because we now have this book, we can help people bone up on the theory by reading the book, which frees up time in the launch course rather than hey, it's Chad, awesome. So rather than investing launch course time in explaining theory, we're going to be able to reinvest that time in practical and how to. So we're working on that right now. It will also compress the total time of the launch course. And the launch course is going to become a very, you guys know the progression. We're going to follow that progression. Chad, great to see you, man. Happy New Year.
Thank you. You as well. Hello, gentlemen.
So that launch course, if you've been through it before, it will be available to you freely. Okay. Chad, I was just sharing what we're evolving the launch course. And because my book is out, a lot of the theory can be covered in the book. So the recommendation is, listen, read the book, especially these chapters, and then participate in the launch course. And we're going to load it in an LMS and run office hours, open mic Q&A office hours that anyone can come to, as we are right here, and they'll be held periodically, on a standard schedule over time, which means that we also, because we're making the launch course more approachable and we're going to put it in everyone's hands, so it will become part of onboarding. It'll be included with onboarding. We can then take the certification, and we're going to move to a single 3-day certification that really focuses on facilitation techniques and facilitating a client case, so that we're applying the methodology through a case-based facilitated session. So if you've been through our certification, this growth specialist certification, that's going to feel very familiar. But we're going to layer the facilitation course on the front end, the facilitation workshop on the front end, and then really spend additional time facilitating over the course of the 3 days. I'm very, very excited for that. For that, and that is on the books for, I'll tell you right now, it's already on the calendar. It's on the calendar for, I should know this off the top of my head. You should see my calendar. It's here in Charleston, 26th, 27th, and 28th of March. So anybody want to mark your calendars if you haven't been through it before, if you want to come back through it again, great. And I get a significant amount of interest in people wanting to go back through. I'm like, great, come back through. Yeah. So
one of the things, George, that we talked about, or I sent you a note about, is if we could get a executive summary of the book that could be, even white labeled, you could write it, whatever. But I think it'd be helpful, because if we give that book out, our by and large, our guys are not readers, and it's not transcribed yet on Amazon or Audible.
Yep.
So, perhaps there's a way we can get a kind of a executive summary paper it's in the works, I'm sure. So,
Joe, we have an ebook, a CEO facing ebook is in the works. So give me a month or 6 weeks, and that'll be available, and that'll be openly available. So you'll have, and with related white papers, I have a mostly written white paper on the 3 dimensions of business growth, and there will be other support, so that you have materials to share with your, the name of the game is to educate our clients, right? Once our clients figure out, once the light bulb goes off, now we want to just keep helping them bone up on, what does it take to become a best-in-class business? What do I need to do? What's the priority in my company? And we are, who did we lose? Joe. We have, because what we're doing, guys, is net new. And I've been doing a lot of thinking and writing about this. You'll see it in this week's blog post. It struck me that we are the only quantitative business advising system, right? There's certainly, with all, not all due respect, that sounds like damning with faint praise, with all respect to Vern Harnish, with all respect to Peter Drucker, with all respect to Gino Wickman. Those are qualitative systems. Vern's comes the closest to being quantitative. Ours is strictly quantitative. We're saying, here's the best practice. Here's how you measure up to the best practice. Here's your score. Here's the impact it has on the value of your business. And importantly, here's how to move the needle. And no one else is doing that. And so it's a new, we kind of, I honor what those guys, the sort of the history here. We represent a quantum leap forward, because we have a quantitative view of transferable value and taking control of transferable value. So there's that I get a lot of materials out to you guys, and there is a good stream of articles, resources, videos headed your way.
George,
that all makes sense. Steve, sir.
Yeah, just for the benefit of the other for Brian and Chad, you want to talk a little bit about the pet rock that I've got and that you and I chewed on? This was late Friday or something like that.
This pet rock, Steve, are you referring to? So Steve and I talk a lot. Steve, are you referring to extrapolating a multiple?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You don't have to. I just thought that quite interesting as well.
So at the beginning of this conversation, Chad, for your benefit, we talked about the fact that, if we think about the range of values chart, we have a range at the bottom end of the range of multiples. Bottom end is pejorative, sort of at the entry multiple, which is, let's take manufacturing, 2.98 times. And I just read a great article, which is really a reverse calculation of company specific risk, right? And then the top end of the range of multiples, manufacturing, six or so times earnings, times EBITDA. Cool. Well, in the range of values, we show upper right is the top end, bottom right is the entry multiple for M&A, and then everything else, how do we and then the range of values looks at, okay, well, if your growth capacity is in this range, your value capacity is in this other range, then here's where we triangulate. Great. Well, what if we took that top multiple, 6 times, let's say $2 million of EBITDA, 6 times $12 million, and said, okay, well, I'm going to do simple math here for my own sake. Your strategic capacity is 50. Well, of that 12 million, then your imputed transferable value is 6 million. Now we're zeroing in on a more precise number, which, obviously it's a more precise number. That you can then extrapolate a multiple from, so in that case, your multiple would be approximately 3, right? 3 times earnings. And Steve was really interested in extrapolating a multiple so he could apply in another system. So you would easily be able to extrapolate a more precise. We do multiples to the 2 decimal point. You could extrapolate just as accurate a multiple. So Steve, is that answer your question?
Yeah, and just for the benefit of Brian and Chad, what I'm trying to do is export that number into a financial system, which is also tracking EBITDA. So I'll have both parts of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I didn't mention it in Clarity, but you can imagine that we are going to want to use APIs to connect Clarity with other systems. For example, the system that Steve is referring to, any system that has an API and allows a sync, we can interface with. So ProfitSense, IBIS World, QuickBooks Online, VFD Pro. Are they going to come up with a U.S. name for it, or are they going to stay with VFD?
As far as I know, they're going to stay there.
Cool. Yeah, there's everything right with doing that.
I mean,
George, you mentioned that it's going to link with QuickBooks and some of the others. It's not doing that now, correct?
It's not. No. But any system that has an API, I mean, that's how. Let's just take HubSpot, right? I don't know what you're using for marketing, but my HubSpot connects to my email, right? It connects to my Google Analytics. It connects to my calendar. It has its tentacles out there connected to a bunch of stuff. It is connected to Stripe. It is connected, it's connected to a bunch of stuff. And I believe I could connect it to QBO. I don't need to. But so we have that same philosophy. I want you to be able to connect Clarity to your tools. Now, I will be very candid and say what I don't want to end up supporting, what we as a company do not want to end up supporting, is the fact that user X is struggling to get the experience they want with their ProfitSense and Clarity integration. We have a wall. Our support wall ends at, well, the API works, and you just need to set up the sync modules. If not, we're going to get been there, done that, and would prefer not to get involved in that business again. We're not tech support. We're tech support for our own tools and to make sure that our tools are set up correctly to interface with the world. But once you're interfacing with the world, now what we want to be able to do is start benchmarking. Let's think about ProfitSense and IBIS World. You're a manufacturing business in Milwaukee and you have $1 million of EBITDA. What do we know, looking out at the world, about manufacturing companies in your type of MSA, right? It's not only local geography, it's similar. Maybe manufacturing companies in Tulsa are comparable, right? Comparable MSA. How do we say, okay, well, we would have expected you at 30 million of gross revenue to have far more than 3 million of EBITDA. Why do you have 3 million of EBITDA? Now, because we're just trying to have really granular and sophisticated conversations. So if we can benchmark you on earnings, on growth rate, on debt, on that, now none of that is going to happen quickly, but it is will interface with the world because we need to be if you go back and look at our vision and mission, we need to be very widely relevant if we're going to impact the middle market and lower middle market in the US and Canada. So, and ultimately elsewhere, but how do we make sure that we are relevant to a wide variety of professions and taking into account a wide variety of intel, right? This is G2 coming from a lot of different places. So, we have our silo, but we want to interact with other silos. That makes sense? So,
yeah, just for context, George, VFD puts a lot of effort into working the APIs with QuickBooks and Xero and Sage, et cetera, but that's because their tool isn't any good unless it does interface. So you're exactly right. If your tool is only useful if it connects with XYZ, then it makes sense to devote a lot of resources to it. But if it doesn't, then it's someone else's problem.
Yeah, it is. And Clarity stands alone, right? If all you ever use as a business advisor, if you're not interested in doing, you're not you three guys are, but if you're Larry Prince, right? Larry is not interested in getting into a financial conversation. He knows it's important, but he's going to say, hey, Brian, why don't why don't we work together to get the books where they need to be, to start accounting for profits, not from a tax planning perspective, but perhaps from a pre-M&A perspective. So Larry can work with Clarity and be very happy. Brian could work with Clarity and be very happy. Be like, you know what? You're a fractional CFO, but we can work with the tool all by itself. But if you have other tools you're using and you think it's going to bring value to your client to integrate the learnings from both systems, then why wouldn't we do that? It's just a matter of philosophy. I haven't quite gone Elon Musk with an open architecture, but pretty close, right? Pretty close. And it's exciting. It's exciting to watch the data. But that's one more comment I'd make. If you think about project management, and let's imagine that we're 5 years from now. Imagine if you had your work with your client over 5 years, and you could see the progress, graphs, et cetera. Here's the impact we had on strategic capacity, on value, on profits, gross revenue. That's all great. Let's benchmark this against the market. Wow, that's interesting. So by working with me, Brian Azarko, we're outperforming the market. Great. And imagine being able to track that against the experience of everyone else who's using Clarity, right? Not on a named basis, but on we can compare it system-wide, all industries. We can compare it by industry. We can compare it by industry and revenue stripe. So you can start having some really interesting, here's people's velocity increasing. So not just the final impact they've had on strategic capacity, but the velocity in regions like sales, right? The velocity with which we attained a strategic capacity of 75, and which is particularly important. It's far easier for a small business of Main Street size, and for a business that already has some pretty sophisticated systems and is just doing a true up. It's the middle market. It's the people in the middle. It's our 5 million to 20 million, 5 million to 50 million, where we're saying, okay, well, let's hold ourselves accountable and let's see how we're doing compared to our peers. And that's going to be some good stuff. So by running project management, what we'll also be able to apply, and I'm careful to not use it, but of course artificial intelligence is part of this. Imagine having an AI tool that would allow you to run these reports and simulations for your client. So Steve, you put your hand up there.
Yeah, just relative to what you're talking about there, just another. Clarity is different than VFD in terms of, because you aren't a Clarity user is probably not going to have 200 clients, but just relative to what you were talking about, VFD has added a capability to their system, and you could sort of do it with Clarity along the lines of what you're talking about. But now the VFD users can set parameters to sort through their database of clients to say, okay, this group needs some attention based upon the KPIs that I set.
Well, yes. And yes, Steve. And I look at it slightly differently. I'd be saying, okay, well, so Chad is using Clarity with X client, and that client is really struggling. So the system has identified that this client is stuck on a sprint, right? This sprint is what we would call red, right? It's stalled. What might we harness AI to go out and pull in for us? Can it be pulling in articles, recommended experts? Imagine what AI, if it's looking at the experience of an individual client and saying, well, other clients aren't getting stuck here. What did they do? Again, on a democratized and anonymous basis. All of this is absolutely anonymized. But what are other clients doing that's working? So we can start recommending steps to take. It becomes incredibly powerful. And we take something like biz equity, which isn't actionable, and start bringing a whole lot more information, whole lot more. It's funny. Our phone is ringing with people who are walking away from biz equity saying, it's a one-trick pony, and my client isn't even that interested. My client wanted a racehorse, and I have a one-trick pony, and it's cool to have the phone ring with all due respect to biz equity. They created a great tool, nothing to detract from them. It is wildly popular especially with insurance and wealth advisors, but it doesn't, it's a big fat, there isn't a now what section at the back. Okay, my value stinks. What am I going to do about it? So very much, as they say, gold in, gold out, which I typically call, we all know what the books look like in your typical client until we've had a chance to help them come up to speed. So it's an exciting lot. Brian, you got your hand up. Go ahead, man.
I just have a question. So if I'm understanding, you talked about quite a bit right there.
Yep.
Sorry. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around that. Is that then interface, say it was ProfitSense, going to be able to come into Growth Drive, and then we'll use that as in our benchmarking, maybe flash reports and things like that?
Yes.
We can start to integrate that data, so we can go from QuickBooks to ProfitSense, right into Growth Drive, and have it all encapsulated in one platform then for the client.
Yes. So you would have one dashboard, and this is something, by the way, guys, I'm committing to you right now, this will not be printable. It'll be printable if you want to put in the elbow grease, because this is a dynamic. So we'll create a dynamic dashboard. So imagine being able to create a tile, and in that tile, I want to include this data. Go. Okay, great. So it's going to pull, the system pulls from the relevant. Okay, so we have the industry data from IBISWorld, and we have the numbers from ProfitSense. ProfitSense also does some fantastic benchmarking. It is a hell of a tool. How does this? So we will have a dynamic dashboard. So I have four tiles here. If you work in HubSpot, I mean, you guys have a lot of experience with this. You're going to create the tiles that you want to display, and then you can screen share them, show them. That is up to you. You are our customer, and what you decide to do with that information is completely up to you. This might be a good time to reiterate the only email that is ever sent to a client from the system automatically is when they complete Clarity Lead Generator. And that's it. So, Steve, fire away. You don't have to raise your hand. Jump in. Although raising your hand gets me to.
This may be a Captain Obvious statement, but here goes. No business can be run with one software. You can't run a business strictly with QuickBooks. You can't run a business strictly with VFD. You can't run a business strictly with Growth Drive. With ProfitSense, it's a collection of tools. And the ideal world is somehow, if it makes sense, you can wire them together so you've got an integrated system.
That's right. And I am very specifically not trying to be a Pollyanna. So if you're using other systems, great. You do not have to. You do not have to go and subscribe to anything to be able to use Clarity very, very effectively with, like 100% effectively with clients. It only comes down to benchmarking. It really comes down to benchmarking, right? Well, okay, this is great. And how do we get out of the habit that we have as CEOs of privately held businesses of saying, I grew 13%. Man, am I a star? Well, you grew at 13%, but your competitors grew at 23%. And you might want to ask yourself some questions, right? We need to put this in market context. That is what's good for the market. So can't be all things to all people, but you're right, Steve. Every business uses some form of, they're going to use tax compliance software, whether they do or their consultant, their tax advisor does. They're going to use financial reporting software, QuickBooks, VFD Pro, ProfitSense, Sage, whatever. They're going to use a CRM. They have, operational software, all of that. I don't. So now, Brian, you just hit on something. What does the business flow, our flash report, look like if we're able to tap into, rather than manually putting in the number of leads in business flow, we're able to API into HubSpot and have it pull in, here's the value of the pipeline. Here are the sales by stage. Here are our gross revenues, our net income, AP, AR. We should be able to pull all of that together into an incredible flash report, right? And you will be able to do that. That is not for today or tomorrow, right? That is first we have to build the blocks. And we are, guys. We've been nailing this thing. So I'm psyched, and I'm psyched to hear back from you guys as we do, right? We discuss it here every week. I talk to all of you on an ongoing basis. We talk about it in our mastermind advisor group. We're going to have some fun. This is about helping you deliver results. And you know how deeply committed I am to helping you build a thriving business based on delivering killer client results. It's the name of the game. So, all right, I'll take a breath. What else? Hey, it's a new year. It's going to be a big year, guys. It's going to be a big year. I'm also going to challenge the community to ask people for one referral. If everybody refers one person and helps helps that person understand why you made the decision to adopt the Growth Drive system and why you think it might be good for them. You don't, not to be a salesperson for us, but to just, people that we are getting more referrals now than we ever have, which has caused me to say, okay, something has changed, something is better. And now I'm going to challenge the community and say, hey guys, a bigger community benefits us all. I have someone I'm trying to help understand that not everyone who is even tangentially related to, it does something that's even a little similar to what they're doing as a competitor. There is so much opportunity. These businesses, we're not even touching. We're not even scraping the surface of the market. There are 6 million businesses out there, of whom about 10% are in the middle, lower middle market and middle market. And those are the businesses we care about. And they're by and large just out there doing their thing without ever having this type of conversation, which is why, Brian, you just had an intro conversation and it went pretty well.
Yeah, they're super excited about, they're going to do Clarity 1 this week. They're excited about that, but just some of the concepts we discussed. Yeah, they're really excited it's kind of like they've never really had these conversations and they need to have them. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, very cool. I love to hear that. And Chad, I know you're having the same, Steve, and I could go on. Nobody calls me and says, George, this stinks. It doesn't work. It's just the opposite. It's like your email the other day, Brian, like, wow, client did not expect the meeting that we delivered and they are elated. Love that. I love that. That's good for you. It's good, really good for them, right? So when we're successful for $1. They're successful for 20. That's okay. That's equitable. So
yeah, I know I've tried referring out. I'll reach out to some guys again in the valuation world. They strictly do predominantly valuation work, but I'm telling them that, hey, these are pretty nice people. You can expand your service offering. Beyond that. So hopefully you'll get some calls.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate it, Brian. And I got to say, man, you look better. You're feeling a lot better. I felt so bad for you.
I'm getting there. I have an RSV, whatever it is, and it's a terrible respiratory attack.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sydney's fighting the same thing right now. It's not COVID. She tests, obviously with her disease, she tests all the time. It's just a horrible respiratory crud. Yeah, no fun. No fun. So,
hey, George, I got a selfish question. So if you and I do a presentation to a group of Clarity presentation, do I need 60 minutes or 90?
I hate to answer it with it depends, but how long do we have?
Well, ideally 60, but that's why I'm asking if I should try to ask for more.
I think perhaps a wise way to approach it. What do you think of this? Get 60 cemented and I'll dedicate an additional 30 for an open mic Q&A session. And by the way, open mic Q&A session with BEI. Who among you participated in the BEI webinar I did with? Okay, did you get an invitation to the office hours today?
Not before I got on here.
Okay. I will. There are office hours today at noon. John Brown and I are going to just have an open mic. Here we are. You have questions. We have answers. So I'll put that. Guys, I will publish that here in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Good deal.
And the thing we're doing is we're expanding in a very thoughtful and targeted way. For example, Anna Halliburta is going to talk about, we're going to put on some long form webinars where that are on specific topics that are very, very dense, designed to deliver a lot of value. And that's part of the plan for this year as well. We're not going to do anything. We're going to sit alone, rest on whatever laurels we've created. And, good luck, guys. That's, I'm incapable of doing that.
Speaking of Brian looking better, I was thinking, if he'd grow some more facial hair, he'd look like Jack Ryan.
You do look like Jack Ryan. Yeah, man. So, okay, guys, it's 10:20. You've listened to me yell from my stump here for a while. Anything you'd like to discuss before we wrap it up for the week?
I think you need to take a break, George.
Yeah.
Just joking.
I love what we're doing. I wake up in the. You guys are the same. We're all we self-select in this community. We wake up. We're excited. It's not always easy. It's not always rah-rah-ree. But generally speaking, it wouldn't change what I'm doing. I had lunch yesterday with a guy with whom he's become a friend, a guy with whom I've done business for years. And he's the same way. And he's looking around at his world saying, what, this is exciting. And I know what parts of my job I love, and I know what parts I'm kind of done with. But But that through line of we're excited to help our clients. It's fun for us. I think that's why. I've said this a couple of times. Someone asked me at the conference. By the way, guys, the conference is on the books, and I'm going to get a contract. We're going to move. I think we're going to move from the Venue to a new hotel here in Charleston. What's your strategy for attracting all these great people? I mean, this is an incredible group. What's your? I don't have a strategy. People self-select into this community. No one is here unless they want to be here. We don't have a hard, we don't beat people over the head to become members. If you want to become a member, please do. You're welcome. And
hey, Steve, I got a quick question for you. You had said that, Clarity, you could not necessarily do, have 200 clients, right, with Clarity. And this may be a question for you, George, but realistically, I mean, how many Clarity clients do you feel like one individual could run at a time?
I can't give you a precise answer, but I'm thinking I
guess like a rule of thumb and a bandwidth.
Yeah. Well, I think I would say the number's closer to 10 than 200.
Yeah.
Is it exactly 10? No, but it depends on how much work you're doing with them. But if you're looking at a long-term engagement to move them from 5 million to 15 million, you're going to be doing quite a bit of work. And
correct.
So.
And Brian, what's your finger in the air?
Yeah, I'm kind of with that. I think it takes a lot of time. Like I'm working with just 2 small ones and 2 like big ones, 10 or one maybe 10 to 30 million. I think they're very time consuming. Just so I'm like, okay, that's enough. Let me try to get through those and munch through those, a little bit, and then see. But at some point, I think Chad, I do believe you train staff and you start to get people helping you, and you can take more and more on. It becomes a scalable process.
That's right.
Believe.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where I'm challenged, where right now my biggest challenge is. I mean, I feel like there's, several other clients that I could go sign up. For me right now, it's just a scaling and bandwidth thing, and I feel like at least what I'm seeing is as I go through the process more and more and more, it's really not that difficult. It's just following the roadmap, right? A lot of data, a lot of just, interviewing. But I do feel like, you could, like you said, even a project manager, as you scale to bring on, I wouldn't say a CEO of a company, but more of maybe not even an admin, but maybe a marketing person or a salesperson.
You're hitting on something, Chad. Can I build on what you just said?
Sure.
So let's say the 3 of you just answer the question absolutely from based on my experience, absolutely correctly. But I look at it slightly differently. So how many people should we have in the Clarity lead gen who are just like, oh, hey, who are like just becoming aware, right at the awareness phase? And let's think about a sale, not just a sales timeline, a sales continuum or buyer's journey, but on an engagement journey that starts as Clarity does with that first marketing touch and goes through long-term engagement. So if you're doing a good job of getting lead gen, starting the strategic capacity conversation with a lot of CEOs, and you're blogging and you're getting in front of groups and you have centers of influence, all the ways in which we can start, extending our reach and impact. And then we're having, how many of those initial client interviews are you having? Some of those are going to be abandons, right? They're not all going to turn into engagements. You don't want them to. You're going to talk to people who are like, wow, I do not want to work with. You don't have the can do, will do. You are coming across as a jerk. You have no budget, whatever. You know better. So if we're having that initial client interview with a lot of people, every opportunity we have, hey, let's have this conversation. Then they're going to translate into, Brian, your point's spot on. We can start and we routinely see people running about 5 engagements at a given time. Now you got to be running 5 clients for whom you're developing a strategic plan. If you're doing it in a facilitated, in the sort of the best case scenario, because that's just, you don't have the hours in the day. But you can, if you're doing them, if you're doing them over time, 5 to 10. Especially if you have a good staff, 10 is a great number to look for. And how do you use the highest and best use of your personal time? So let's think in terms of of 10 people from whom you're collecting a retainer, 10 people from whom you're delivering services and earning project fees, senior leadership alignment workshop, strategic planning retreat, prioritization workshops. All of these very valuable experiences we can help our clients have. So, I think you guys are spot on, but I would think of it in terms of a funnel. And how many people am I interacting with at all? How many am I interacting with a little more profoundly, et cetera? And if there's a firm, as firms are saying, let's take Brian. And Brian, listen, world, I'm not saying that Brian is doing this, but let's take Brian, who's inside a firm. He has a valuation practice. You have people doing CSA. You have tax compliance. We have all sorts of different services at the firm. This, if you look at, and I've done this with Brian specifically, but if you look at all of the different opportunities that are present themselves, we can be working with clients always in ways that have a very high ROI for them, right? We're not draining them like a vampire. We're actually pumping them up. There's a terrific opportunity here. Go ahead, Steve.
Just one more thing, and I always get this whether upside down, but whether you're a 1 or a 5, and I'm not sure which one is which, but if you're the architect, you can probably handle more than if you're the tradesperson or if you're delving in the trades world, obviously.
Fabulous point. And you should be developing your 1s and 2s out there. If you're a 3, an architect, a 4, a general contractor, or, if you get fractional, that's very few clients. But you should be developing your 1s and 2s, and whether those are bankers, wealth advisors, insurance, and I would harken back, and maybe in closing, BEI's owner-based planning is a great way to show your relevance to wealth and insurance advisors, and provide a why they would collaborate with you and a client. This is far beyond, we're not saying introduce me to your client. We're saying you and me, we're going to meet with your client. We're going to have a joint conversation about protecting cash, about compensating their team, de-risking the business, et cetera. And that is a joint conversation that's accretive to transferable value.
He hasn't been on the call recently, but Joseph F., I believe that's exactly what he does.
He does.
He's 99% architect.
Yeah, Joseph is a great guy. Joseph, if you watch this, hope to see you again soon. He's been incredibly busy, and he's a consummate pro. All right, guys, we were at the bottom of the hour. This was fun. Thank you. Well, it was fun. I don't mean that me talking the whole time is fun, but I love getting your feedback in these conversations. It's also fun to share where we're going. So thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, George.
Guys, have a great week. Anything I can do to help, you know where I live, right? All right, guys, be well. Have a great week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.